Welcome back to the podcast and today's episode with me, Johnny Pardo. Today, I welcome my friend Billy to the show, and we're going to be talking about many things, myths around weight loss, and much more. So, Billy, welcome to the show. Glad to have you on today. What I'd really love to know, first of all, the listener I'm sure wants to know as well, is how much weight have you lost? And share a little bit about your journey. I know your story, and what really sparked your transformation in terms of going through your weight loss journey.
So I was a picked on kid, and I did some things through high school. I was never big, and on into early college, I was the thin kid, and etc. Eventually, though, when I my metabolism slowed and changed, and there's some reasons behind that we may get into later, I ballooned to around 400 to 424 pounds. The scale went to 400. It was one of those spring ones. The white space was about 20 pounds and went past that almost to the five. And what sparked the weight loss, I attempted dozens of diets, dozens and dozens and dozens of miracle products, patches, pills, potions, etc. And I come down with leukemia, 2010. And that began the real transformation. It was the first turning point. And I dove into how to cure myself from the type 2 diabetes and the chemotherapy. And in that, I started discovering some things that actually helped me lose the first 100 pounds. However, I still had 120 to go when I, years later, run into a mentor who's helping me build an online business. And she said, "You should go into the fat loss business." I'm like, who wants to learn from a guy who's still 100, 120 pounds overweight? Nobody's going to do that. And she was very adamant that people who had lost 100, that had 200 to lose, would definitely follow a guy who got rid of 100 and kept it off for a very long time. And so I started a Facebook group just to give it away, just to and start getting forever marketing, if you will. And in that, I inadvertently started on the path to finding the last piece of the puzzle. That last piece of the puzzle was my short version of it was my identity. I started showing up for those people as an example, which meant I did everything I knew. And I did it consistently because my identity, not my willpower, my identity was helping.
Mm.
And that started my further weight loss, another 120 some pounds. And at the same time, I started getting feedback from some of the people in that group, and eventually I formed a paid group and a process to sell my wisdom. And in that, I started seeing these mindset shifts, and getting into alignment. And that I knew willpower wasn't the key, wasn't because I'd already done it many times. And anybody think back to like things like our New Year's resolutions and how quickly we abandon those. Those willpower doesn't work. How many of us have abandoned a diet 2 to 4 months
Mm.
in, maybe six at the max?
Guilty.
Willpower
Yeah.
don't work. However, identity, when you say I'm healthy, you move forward with healthier choices over and over and over. And I help people master that process.
That's awesome. I love the journey you've done and being able to help people with that. And yeah, for you, like you talked about like the role of identity and that really helping your transformation. Why do you feel like things like willpower don't work?
So the reason I feel like willpower doesn't work, it works fine for, depending on the individual, 15,
Mm.
30, maybe even 80, 90 days. Works fabulous. And you trim off the first 20 or 30 pounds, often doing something that's actually harming you because it's slowing your metabolism. That's the part most people don't understand. We can go into that later. And eventually they get to what I call effort mode, to use a polite version. And when they hit that wall, they abandon the willpower. They abandon what they've been doing, and that's actually good for them because it's actually slowing their metabolism. And right after that, they go out and start the binge eating, and they put the weight back on, a portion of it. The scale goes up a little bit, and they go, "Ah," and stop, and go back to sort of the diet. However, they know that one ain't working, they go looking for another one, and they repeat the process. Problem is, by the time they found another one, they've usually put all the weight back on, and the first 5 pounds that came back when they first went off the diet is the additional weight they see. So
Mm.
willpower is really not it, because willpower is not sustainable. Um, I've seen it in addiction recovery programs and other stuff where people can willpower for a while. It's powerful. If you must get something done. We can willpower our way for like I said, a month to three. But somewhere around three, most of us just can't do it. And definitely by the time 6 months is up, anybody who makes a change that lasts longer than 6 months did it from an identity shift.
Mm,
We, you and I have Tony Robbins in our background and other gurus like that of self-help and development, and they all teach it differing ways. But the real thing is when your identity shifts, even the Bible teaches it.
mm,
As a man thinketh, or as a man holdeth in his heart, he shall be. That's identity. You talk to the rich. They got rich because they had the identity of a rich person and stopped buying cars to show off and airplanes to show off. They afford those things when they get rich, actually truly rich. But a lot of people are out there attempting to be rich and they're buying the Lexus to make themselves look good.
mm.
This diet stuff's very similar.
I love what you said about identity, and yeah, it's Tony's quote that I think I've quoted a few times on this podcast with guests and just doing solo episodes is one of the strong. What's his quote? One of the strongest forces of the human personality is the need to be consistent with how we define ourselves. I love
Yes,
that
that's
quote from
identity.
him. Yeah, the identity. How do you, with your identity, how did you create a new identity? Was it just you had to like feel it again and again? Did you just have to keep
So
saying certain things?
with weight loss, there's several aspects. First off, you got to know what actually works, not be working on the diet, what I call the diet myths or half truths. Things like diet myth, breakfast most important meal of the day, invented by the maker of Kellogg cereal as a marketing slogan is not true, but it's been said so many times in so many places. It's adopted as nutritional wisdom. It's not. It's actually harmful to our bodies. Now, how you break your fast in a day is important. That's a different subject. Half truths, move more, eat less. That works fine to take 15 pounds off of somebody who gained it over the holidays in January and early February. It does not work long term because the metabolism adapts in 90 to 120 days to the moving more or the eating less or combination. And the weight loss slows down and eventually they're gaining weight despite moving more and or eating less. So the knowledge is part of it, solid knowledge. However, that good knowledge, even if you have all of it, well made, well done from the best holistic doctors and etc., the more you know, the more you fail, the more you beat yourself up, which beats up on your identity. So identity shifts begin with knowing some, acting consistently, which
Mm,
takes some willpower. Yes, it does. However, as you're acting consistently, what you're saying to yourself matters. So if you're saying, I wish, I hope, I dream, some of these words are better, like I desire comes from possibility. I wish, I want comes from lack. Those things aren't quite the same. However, I desire is better. However, it's not quite there. When you start stacking these things, though, you keep consistently showing up for yourself, have an accountability program of friends or and a program that actually supports what your goal is, having role models that have done it, etc. So you know it's possible because that plants a seed in the back of your mind that says it's in the front of your mind and the back of your mind that you can because these other people did. You keep stacking that together over time. You can do the Tony Robbins incantations, incantations, really long. However, identity shift comes one day suddenly, you don't really realize you've made it. However, with proper mentoring and proper guidance and consistency, which goes beyond willpower, make it a habit, eventually you shift over into I can and I will, and then that becomes I am. When that I can and I will forms the habit, eventually that shifts into I am healthy or I am wealthy if you're working on wealth. This stuff, same stuff works for a lot of areas of our life. I am a good family man. Whatever aspect of life you want to put in there, I am a good follower of my religious practice, whatever. Those when the I am becomes aligned, it's very hard to violate that. In the very beginning, you can, but once you really got it in your soul, in your heart, and in the amygdala, back of your brain, you're you're looking at the cookies aisle at the grocery store. You go, no, not me, not today. You don't even walk down it.
Hmm. Just automatic.
Versus when you're in the I can and I will, you go, I've been good for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I could have a couple cookies. It wouldn't hurt me. Not to say that cookies are the way you wind up fat. You just to start making more consistent decisions that actually help you control your insulin levels. When you do that, you become healthier. And then that the final piece of that is that when you start to become healthier, you feel so much better, you do more of it. The more you do, the better you feel. The more you do, the better you feel. The more you do, the better you feel, the better you feel, the better you feel, the better you feel. And suddenly you're going, I am a healthy person. And it's undeniable. I walk into a room, people remark about my health, especially people that knew me at 400 pounds, like, what happened? But the people who meet me even a couple months ago go, you're always talking about health and wealth and your physical health. How does that happen? It's like who you are. I go, well, yeah, I kind of teach this stuff. However, it's also who I am. Even if I didn't teach it, I would still want to have that identity because it's helped me trim off 225 pounds, 227, depending on the day and how much water I'm retaining. And I know it'll serve me the rest of my life to stay healthy.
Hmm. I like that. What I wrote down there was at the start there may be a little bit of willpower in terms of like acting in it, but there's the systems, the accountability you've got with it. And at the begin, I'm just thinking for the person at the beginning who's thinking like they're saying I am healthy, but they know they're not. There's
That
it's a I will, I can at the start, and then it becomes an I am with those other systems and consistent action over time. Is that right?
consistent action over time, and that can be started with willpower. However, you pointed out a key aspect. When you say I'm healthy in your brain, in the back of your brain, the subconscious part goes,
Mm,
yeah, bullshit. You're
yeah.
400 pounds, dummy. You got type 2 diabetes, dummy, and beats you up. And usually you don't have as polite words as dummy. Um, that internal dialogue undoes any incantation or positive mind frame stuff you want to repeat over and over and over. However, when you first start, you go, I'm doing my best. I can be. The belief that you can, that you that the consistency over time stacks to you feeling a little better from you losing the first 10 or 15 pounds. Or if you're doing wealth, you put the first $100 in the bank and you keep it there long term. All of it's literally these processes are close to identical in the identity shift. And when you're walking this path, the incantations are good. The self-talk is good, but you need to frame it in a way that your brain can accept it.
Mm,
And a part of that comes from having the right people around a peer group of people who have done it. It's one of the things that's in my system is having a peer group of people who've done it, who live as living examples that it works, that what you're doing actually fully works long term, not just for the few months that you're on your newest diet plan, not because they put it in some copyright advertisement that shows these people lost this weight. Truth is, a lot of those people lost, yeah, they lost that weight. We can look at that. What was that show that had the Biggest Loser? 90 some percent of those people put 100% of the weight back on and more in the 1 to 2 years after they were off that show because they didn't have an
wow.
identity shift. And they also, I think some of the stuff they do on the show, they actually mess up their metabolism worse. And even though they keep it up for 90 to 180 days to get to the goal, it's still not ideal. It's lacking the identity shift. It's lacking true knowledge that allows you to build a real lifestyle, a lifestyle you actually enjoy, not a lifestyle of complete lack. For instance, if you don't have a dairy allergy, you can have ice cream once in a while. If you don't have a wheat allergy, you can be eating a cookie now and then or two, or having a bun on your hamburger if you choose that, and you're not allergic to dairy because obviously there might be cheese on your hamburger. All of that aside, though, I don't preach 100% abstinence to anything because then life becomes, oh God, I don't look forward to making it to 90 at this rate.
Mm,
If I can't have my favorite items in life, that are, quote, not good for you, you're not going to stay with it. When you build a lifestyle that allows you to have some of those things in it once in a while, so that you can cure the cravings, so you can cure the want, or you're out with your family. And let's say your big example, wedding. You're at a wedding for somebody you really care about, and they pass the cake. The tradition is you eat some of the cake. You may know that you're going to have a small reaction because you have a mild allergy to the wheat. You're going to know there's going to be 150, 200 calories worth of sugar in that. Yet when you have the lifestyle I espouse you to have, you know you can have it. You have these maybe small consequences, yet tomorrow you're right back on the plan because your identity is I'm a healthy person. And you also help celebrate the wedding. You get to live life, a real life, a life you look forward to living.
Hmm.
And
So
that fuels
become
that identity.
hmm. So becoming that healthy person, or well, becoming that person having that life now, rather than being like, oh, I'm gonna be super strict on myself for like the next 90 days, which is what we see a lot of encouraged, like this
Yeah. And
12
here's
week
the
or
thing.
12 week or whatever sort of
The thing
program.
is none of us got that. Those of us that are fat didn't get fat in 90 days or 2 years, even. Very rarely. We got fat over a very long period of time. Truth is, when you lose weight, attempt to lose 100 pounds in 90 days, well, that's maybe possible under the most extreme of circumstances, and you're doing real damage to your body. Truth is, if you took 100 pounds off in a year, though, that's possible. I did it. I did it in a healthy manner that didn't upset my metabolism. I didn't drive my hormones wacko, etc. The stuff that would actually sabotage my long-term success and cause a relapse back. And I didn't do it with restriction, or I didn't ever have a candy bar. I never had any ice cream or anything like that. I didn't ever have pizza, whatever those things are that you desire. I had those things occasionally with full permission, knowing it wasn't derailing me. There was a relief to the desire to have it, scratch the itch, if you will. It allowed me to move forward healthily. And that's out there for everybody.
Hmm.
When you go into the complete, you can't have any of these items that are, quote, bad for you. You get into a place where denial eventually leads you to, F it, I'm going out and I'm going to have me a pizza or whatever the thing is, or a cake or an ice cream or something. And that leads to guilt, blame, shame, and all the other stuff. And you're right back into your old behavior and you lose your identity of I'm a healthy person.
Hmm.
And that's
That's
full
willpower.
derailment. And it's part of the yo-yo process,
Hmm.
what we call yo-yo dieting. You can willpower the 15 pounds off from the holidays easily. Go to the gym, move more, eat less, and your metabolism won't slow down enough to really upset the apple cart. By the time you're done losing the weight in 1.5, 2 months, you're back into your regular diet. You're going to be fine. But those of us that are obese, 50, 100, 200, 300 pounds overweight, it is diet suicide, in my opinion.
Hmm. Wow. With diets, then, do you feel like that links to what we talked about with like willpower? And that's because I know lots of people talk about like diets, and it's like, you got to go on a diet. Do you find the word diet uh, an empowering word to use?
Okay, there's two forms of the word diet. There's the
Mm,
common use, diet meaning restriction.
mm,
Then there's the scientific definition of diet, what you eat.
mm,
Very different definitions of it. If you're using it in the restriction form, I don't like the word at all. If we're using it to refer to the scientific definition of what you put in your mouth, what you consume with your mind too, also, that's part of our
true.
diet. Self-empowering stuff, things like a Tony Robbins book, just to use a good example, we both know.
Mm,
That kind of stuff feeds that identity also, different than what eating healthier foods do, right? When your identity shifts, though, you make better and better selections. You're eating more out of the produce aisle, more out of the vegetables aisle than the super sweet fruits aisle in that aisle, right? When you go to the meat counter, you choose the hormone free or the free range or the wild caught. You choose to spend a few more dollars on your food because it's worth it. During my cancer journey, that 9 months, Well, I don't know what the exact number was, but it's in the $5 to $10 million area. At $5 million, that meant I could have had for 100 years $50,000 a year food budget. None of us spend that kind of money on food. Or maybe I did the math wrong. 5,000 extra a year on my food budget for 100 years. 10,000 for 50 years. We we don't spend that kind of money on food. None of us do. Well, maybe the super wealthy and are eating decadent $300 dinners and stuff. However, normal food in the grocery store, etc., we don't spend that kind of money on food. So an extra few dollars on your food budget because you care for yourself, because you have an identity of I love me, I am healthy, it's worth it to pay for the wild caught fish. It's worth it to pay for more organic vegetables. And there's ways to actually cut that budget some, because some vegetables they don't spray stuff on. They don't crossbreed them, like onions, garlic, etc. Eat all of that you want, and you can get it any source you want.
Hmm.
So
Empowering,
the
healthy.
word I use the word eating regime when I'm being differentiating between a
Hmm.
diet, the restriction form, and what we actually put in our mouth. And I also teach people to have an eating cycle that's actually supportive of their long-term goals. So they cycle their insulin properly, and that helps balance their hormones and gets them on their path towards wellness.
Wow. There's a lot to yeah. There's a lot to it, and this that you
And
know that you've obviously know your facts. So
yeah, we could spend 50 hours here and we still
yeah,
wouldn't cover it
definitely.
all probably because I'd have another thing and another thing. Matter of fact, when I'm helping people, I often go, "Oh, I can make a class out of that." Um, the However, we get back to that identity and that shift, and you're moving forward and you're powerfully going that way. It's easy to take out the things that you know are obesogenic, processed, allergic, inflammatory. I teach all of those as different classes, what those are, and there's a lot of overlap in them. However, those things all work against your long-term health. So even you would benefit from those as a thin, healthy person, as well as the person
Mm.
who's overweight, obese, fat, however you want to refer to it. They stack that as part of their identity when they learn better. And it becomes the better they feel, the easier it is. And the more it's easy, then the better they feel, the more they do it, the more weight they lose, the more their identity shifts to I am a healthy person. And that shift happens way before the weight's gone. And it carries them the momentum for the 1, 2, 3 years it takes to take 1, 2, 300 pounds off. And at the end, because they have that identity, they won't go back to the really destructive behaviors that got them there. They'll continue a lifestyle that's sustainable. Maybe they'll relax the rules a little bit and turn it back on. Like I have a client who lost 80 some pounds and hit very close to her goal. Over December, she went on food debauchery. She went on a cruise and a vacation and went to all the Christmas parties. She put on 9 pounds in December. Took her 2 weeks in January to take it all back off because she went back to the fundamentals and the basics. And
Mm.
not from willpower, from I know I'm healthy and I know I went and did this debauchery of a trip and etc. And she was ecstatic at how well it worked and how easy it was to just return to normal for her now, healthy lifestyle. And the
Wow.
best part is the lifestyle continued on out, expand your health span so that when you hit 95, 105, or whatever that year is, you're not coming along going, "Ugh, where's the remote? Who stole the remote? Oh, when's dinner? Where's my pills?" That's not life. That's misery. Let's learn to regain our health and have a lifestyle that we actually look forward to making it to 90, 100, 200, well, maybe not 200, 110, 115. And current science is showing that we might be able to make it to 120, 130, especially if we're in the younger half of our years and under 30 or under 40.
Wow. I love all the impact you're making on other people as well, Billy. And just kind of like wrapping or finalizing with that. Like I know you said we could be talking for 50 hours more on some of these subjects, and you've got an extensive amount of knowledge, and you're helping people one on one in groups. You've got all these materials out there at different ranges. Yeah, for the listener, where can they find you? if I know you've got a group in particular, where can they find you if they want to get in touch?
Well, I have two ways for you to find me easily. If you're on Facebook at all, you can find 100-pound fat loss forum. That has a little like 3 questions to join. When you join that, please drop the name of Johnny Pardo and this name of this podcast, etc., so that I know where you come from. So I can give Johnny a thank you. Thank you for watching the podcast, as
Hmm.
well as instantly approve you. I don't have to go looking at your profile, make sure you're not some kind of clone that's getting in there to just go after the people, because I do curate that and make sure it's a safe place for people who are looking for real improvement.
Mm.
And then you can also find and follow me on Facebook at billyjoearthur.com, BILLYJOEARTHUR. Not the .com is that's my web page that I don't have up. It's one I did reserve though, and got used to saying it. So you find Billy Joe Arthur on there. I always have a top hat on. It's
Love
either
it.
black, white, or brown. And it's very definitely a top hat in all the pictures. You go looking at my pictures, you'll very quickly see it's exactly me. Even if you're looking at, actually, when you get old ones, my old fat ones, no, they look a lot like this if this shows up for the video. Um, More like this guy, very
Mm.
fat, no
Wow.
hat. That was a long time ago. Uh, However, that's how you get a find me. Send me a direct message. Say you saw me on Johnny Pardo's podcast, and we'll make friends and move forward with helping you if you desire help. And if you just want to learn some good stuff for being healthier, hang around my group, hang around me, because as I said, everything I'm teaching is a longevity practice. It's endorsed by a cancer Harvard researcher who actually is a TEDx speaker. Her quotes on my page and on my 100-pound fat loss group. Those things are out there because even the thin people can learn to be healthier when they get the real facts. Real facts like
Mm.
move more, eat less doesn't serve any of us really. Now, I'm not throwing exercise under the bus. That gives you quality of life for sure. However, your 1,500 calories from the Venti Frappa Mocha Latte thing you get takes about 2 hours of exercise, the equivalent of if you were going to run a half marathon or almost a half marathon in 2 hours, 2 hours and 20 minutes. That kind of intensity in 2 hours, almost none of us have to dedicate to burning off one Mocha Frappa Latte Venti size at
Wow.
1,500 calories or 2 Big Macs or something like that. We just don't have that time. So I would love to help anybody be healthier. It's my passion, right up there with watching sunsets and having fun with family,
Oh, amazing, Billy.
making
Oh,
a difference.
absolutely. Well, thank you, Billy, so much for everything you shared. And yeah, make sure you reach out and look at Billy's Facebook group that's going to be joined up or linked in the show notes below this as well. So, once again, Billy, a big thank you for coming on today.
You're welcome, sir. It's my honor to be on your show. And if you have a desire for a follow-up or something like that, I would be very, very open to coming back.
Awesome. Yeah, we've
It's a
got
pleasure to meet
loads to
you
cover.
like this, as well as to have you as a online friend. And I look forward to supporting your podcast and etc. When this drops, for sure, your links will be all over all my stuff, and
Amazing.
there'll be
Cool.
resources that are pinned forever because I'd love to have other people see this interview.
Amazing.
And I
So,
did look at some of your podcasts. There's some real good information in there. The guy on sleep, I learned a couple things. I'll be incorporating some of that into my stuff. I knew a lot about how sleep helps your weight. However, he taught me a couple things in just the first 15 minutes of that podcast. So
good old Ashley. No, thank you. And yeah, thank you for helping today. So, that concludes our episode for today. And remember to lead with your heart and not with fear.